You're $32,000 in debt. Maybe it's student loans, maybe it's credit cards, maybe it's medical bills you never asked for. You're drowning and someone hands you a life raft. His name is Dave Ramsey. He tells you to cut up your credit cards, sell everything you own, eat rice and beans, and attack your smallest debt first, regardless of interest rate. He promises that if you follow his plan, you'll be debt-free and financially secure. So you try it. You cut up the cards. You eat the beans. You work the extra shifts. And somewhere around month 4, you're exhausted. You're not seeing the progress you hoped for, and you're wondering if you're doing something wrong. Here's what nobody tells you. You're not doing anything wrong. The math is wrong. Dave Ramsey's advice works for some people in some situations, but it's not universal law. It's not always the optimal path. And in some cases, following his advice will actually cost you tens of thousands of dollars and years of your life. Today we're going to break down exactly where Dave Ramsey's advice fails, why it fails, and what you should do instead. Not because Dave Ramsey is evil, but because math is math, and your money deserves better than one-size-fits-all advice. Let me start by saying this. Dave Ramsey has helped millions of people. If you've gotten out of debt following his plan, I'm genuinely happy for you. His advice works best for people who have a behavior problem with money, people who need the psychological win of paying off small debts, people who are so overwhelmed they need simple rules to follow. There's real value in that. But here's the problem. Dave Ramsey treats all debt the same. He treats a 3% student loan the same as a 24% credit card. He tells you to pay off your smallest debt first, even if your largest debt is charging you 5 times the interest. He tells you to never use credit cards, even if you could be earning rewards and building credit for free. He tells you to pause all investing until you're completely debt-free, even if your employer is offering to match your retirement contributions. And when you do the actual math on these decisions, the numbers don't lie. Following Dave Ramsey's advice in those situations will cost you real money, thousands of dollars, maybe tens of thousands, and you'll never get that money back. If you've ever felt like Dave Ramsey's advice doesn't quite fit your situation, if you've ever wondered why paying off your $200 medical bill before your $15,000 high-interest credit card feels wrong, if you've ever thought there has to be a better way, you're not crazy. You're seeing the math. And today we're going to walk through it together, step by step, so you can make the decision that's actually right for your money, not the decision that sounds good in a motivational speech. Because here's the truth. Personal finance gurus make money by being confident and simple. But your financial life isn't simple, and confidence doesn't pay your bills. Math does. Let's start with Dave Ramsey's most famous piece of advice, the debt snowball. This is the idea that you should pay off your debts from smallest to largest, regardless of interest rate. You make minimum payments on everything except the smallest debt, throw every extra dollar at that smallest debt, and when it's gone, you roll that payment into the next smallest debt. The theory is that paying off small debts gives you psychological wins that motivate you to keep going. And psychologically, that makes sense. Humans like checking boxes. We like visible progress, but here's where the math gets ugly. Let's say you have 3 debts. Debt 1, $500 at 6% interest. Debt 2, $3,000 at 18% interest. Debt 3, $10,000 at 8% interest. Dave Ramsey tells you to pay off debt 1 first because it's the smallest. So you throw an extra $200 a month at that $500 debt. You pay it off in 3 months, you feel great. Then you move to debt 2, the $3,000 debt at 18%. But here's the problem. For those 3 months you were focused on the $500 debt, your $3,000 debt was accruing interest at 18%. That's about $45 per month in interest. Over 3 months, that's $135 in interest you wouldn't have paid if you'd tackled the high-interest debt first. Now let's compare that to the debt avalanche method, which Dave Ramsey dismisses. The avalanche method says pay off your highest interest rate debt first, regardless of balance. Using the same debts, you'd throw that extra $200 at debt 2, the 18% credit card. In the first month, you pay off about $200 of principal instead of letting it accrue interest. The math is straightforward. Every dollar you pay toward high-interest debt saves you more money in interest than a dollar paid toward low-interest debt. Over the course of paying off all 3 debts, the avalanche method will save you hundreds or even thousands of dollars compared to the snowball method. That's not theory. That's just compound interest working against you versus working for you. Dave Ramsey knows this math. He's not stupid. But he argues that the psychological benefit of small wins outweighs the mathematical cost. And for some people, maybe it does. But that's a choice you should make consciously, knowing what it costs you. Dave Ramsey doesn't present it that way. He presents the snowball method as the way, not as one option with trade-offs. Here's another place where the math falls apart. Dave Ramsey tells you to stop all investing until you're completely debt-free, except for a 15% retirement contribution. That means if you have student loans, car loans, any debt at all, you shouldn't be investing in a taxable brokerage account or extra retirement savings beyond that 15%. The logic is that you should focus on one thing at a time and eliminate debt completely. But let's run the numbers. Say you have $20,000 in student loans at 4% interest. You also have an employer who will match your 401k contributions up to 6% of your salary. You make $50,000 a year. If you follow Dave Ramsey's advice and only contribute enough to get the match, you're contributing $3,000 and your employer is contributing $3,000. That's $6,000 total going into your retirement account each year. But what if you're in a position to contribute an extra $2,000 per year beyond the match? Dave Ramsey says no. Put that $2,000 toward your student loans instead. Let's see what that costs you. Your student loans are at 4% interest. Your retirement account, historically, returns about 7 to 10% per year on average. Let's be conservative and say 7%. If you put $2,000 toward your student loans, you're saving 4% interest on that money. That's $80 per year in interest saved. If you put $2,000 into your retirement account at 7% returns, you're earning $140 in the first year, and that compounds. Over 10 years, that $2,000 in the market becomes about $4,000. That same $2,000 applied to your student loan saves you maybe a few $100s in interest over the life of the loan. The difference is thousands of dollars. And that's not even accounting for the tax benefits of retirement contributions. You're literally leaving free money on the table, money that compounds over decades in order to follow a rule that sounds disciplined but is mathematically suboptimal. Dave Ramsey will tell you that being debt-free is worth more than investment returns. But your 70-year-old self, looking at a retirement account that's tens of thousands of dollars smaller because you paused investing in your 30s, might disagree. Now let's talk about credit cards, because this is where Dave Ramsey goes from suboptimal to actively harmful for some people. Dave Ramsey says cut up your credit cards, never use them, debit cards only. His argument is that credit cards enable overspending and debt. And for people with spending problems, that's true. If you can't control your spending, credit cards are dangerous. But here's what he doesn't tell you. If you can use a credit card responsibly, meaning you pay the full balance every month and never carry debt, credit cards are better than debit cards in every measurable way. They offer fraud protection that debit cards don't. They build your credit score, which affects your insurance rates, your ability to rent an apartment, your mortgage interest rate. They offer rewards, cashback, travel points. If you're spending money anyway, spending it on a credit card that gives you 2% cashback is literally free money. 2% of your annual spending could be hundreds or thousands of dollars per year. But Dave Ramsey doesn't care about that because his advice is built for people who can't be trusted with credit cards. And that's fine for those people. But it's not fine to tell everyone that credit cards are evil and should never be used. That's like telling everyone to never drive a car because some people drive drunk. The tool isn't the problem. The behavior is the problem. And if you have responsible behavior, the tool is valuable. By telling everyone to avoid credit cards, Dave Ramsey is costing responsible people real money and real credit-building opportunities. A person with no credit history will pay higher interest rates on a mortgage, higher insurance premiums, and may struggle to rent apartments. That's a real cost. And it's a cost that Dave Ramsey dismisses because his framework doesn't account for it. Here's the deeper issue. Dave Ramsey's advice was built for a different economy. He started giving financial advice in the 1990s, when interest rates on savings accounts were 6% and mortgage rates were 8% and a college degree cost $10,000. In that world, his advice made more sense. Pay off debt aggressively because you weren't giving up as much in opportunity cost. Don't use credit cards because you could get decent returns in a savings account. Get out of debt and save because the economy rewarded savers. But we don't live in that economy anymore. We live in an economy where savings accounts %, where student loans can be $100,000, where the stock market is one of the only ways to build wealth because wages have stagnated and housing costs have exploded. In this economy, the math is different. The trade-offs are different. Following advice designed for 1995 and 20-20-6 is like using a map from 30 years ago and wondering why all the roads are different. Let me give you a specific example of how this plays out. Let's say you graduated college in 2010 with $60,000 in student loans at 5% interest. You're making $45,000 a year. You want to buy a house someday, you want to retire comfortably, and you want to not be in debt forever. Dave Ramsey's advice: live on nothing, throw every extra dollar at those student loans. Don't invest beyond the employer match, and pay off the debt as fast as possible. Let's say you throw an extra $1,000 per month at the loans. You pay them off in 6 years. You're debt-free at age 28. Congratulations. Now let's look at the alternative path. You make the minimum payments on your student loans, which are maybe $500 per month. You take that extra $500 per month and you invest it in a low-cost index fund. Over those same 6 years, you've invested $36,000. At a 7% average return, that's grown to about $48,000. Your student loans still exist, but you've been making payments, so the balance is down to maybe $40,000. You now have $48,000 in investments and $40,000 in debt. Net worth, $8,000 positive. Compare that to the Dave Ramsey path. You have 0 debt and 0 investments. Net worth, 0. You're $8,000 better off by not following Dave Ramsey's advice. And that gap only widens over time because that $48,000 keeps compounding. But here's where Dave Ramsey supporters will push back. They'll say, you're not accounting for risk. What if the market crashes? What if you lose your job and you have debt and no savings? And those are real risks. But they're risks you can manage. You can have an emergency fund and invest and pay down debt simultaneously. Dave Ramsey acts like you can only focus on one thing at a time, but that's not true. You can have a balanced approach. You can pay more than the minimum on your debt, contribute to retirement, and build an emergency fund all at the same time if your income allows it. The real question is, what's the optimal allocation of your extra money? And the answer depends on interest rates, investment returns, tax benefits, and your personal risk tolerance. It's not a one-size-fits-all answer. But Dave Ramsey gives a one-size-fits-all answer because that's his brand. Simplicity, confidence, black and white rules. And for some people, that's what they need. But for a lot of people, it's costing them money. So why does Dave Ramsey's advice persist? Why do millions of people follow it even though the math doesn't always work? Because it's not about math. It's about psychology and marketing. Dave Ramsey is a brilliant marketer. He's built a brand around discipline, hard work, and moral judgment. He frames debt as a moral failing. He calls people who don't follow his advice stupid. He uses shame and urgency to motivate behavior change. And for people who are desperate, who are drowning in debt and need someone to tell them exactly what to do, that works. They need the tough love. They need the simple rules. They need to believe that if they just follow the plan, everything will be okay. Dave Ramsey gives them that. And the psychological relief of having a plan, even if it's not the mathematically optimal plan, has real value. Feeling in control of your money is worth something. Feeling like you're making progress is worth something. But it's not worth tens of thousands of dollars. It's not worth sacrificing your financial future because you followed rules that don't fit your situation. Here's the other reason Dave Ramsey's advice persists: survivorship bias. The people who succeeded with his plan talk about it. The people who didn't succeed either blame themselves or disappear. You hear the success stories on his radio show, in his testimonials, in his marketing. You don't hear from the people who paused investing for 5 years to pay off low-interest student loans and now have a retirement account that's $50,000 smaller than it could have been. You don't hear from the people who avoided credit cards and now have no credit history and can't qualify for a mortgage. You don't hear from the people who followed the debt snowball and paid thousands of dollars in unnecessary interest. Those people don't call into the radio show. They just quietly move on, maybe feeling like they failed, when in reality the system failed them. The advice failed them. And that's the problem with treating personal finance like religion instead of math. Religion requires faith. Math requires calculation. Your money doesn't care about your faith. It responds to math. So what should you do instead? First, recognize that debt is not one thing. Debt is a tool, and like any tool, it can be used well or poorly. A 3% student loan is not the same as a 22% credit card. A mortgage at 4% is not the same as a payday loan at 400%. The interest rate matters. The terms matter. The opportunity cost matters. Stop treating all debt as evil and start treating debt as a math problem. If your debt has a high interest rate, above 7 or 8%, prioritize paying it off aggressively because that interest is eating you alive. If your debt has a low interest rate, below 5%, consider paying the minimum and investing the difference, especially if you have access to employer matching or tax-advantaged retirement accounts. Run the numbers. Compare the interest you're paying on debt to the returns you could earn investing. Make a decision based on math, not on what a radio host told you. Second, build a hybrid approach. You don't have to choose between paying off debt and investing. You can do both. You can follow a modified avalanche method where you pay off high-interest debt first but also contribute enough to get your employer match. You can build a small emergency fund, then split extra money between debt payoff and investing. You can use credit cards responsibly and pay them off in full every month while also working to eliminate your high-interest debt. Personal finance is personal. It's not one size fits all. The optimal strategy for you depends on your interest rates, your income, your risk tolerance, your timeline, and your goals. A 25-year-old with $50,000 in 4% student loans and a stable job should probably invest heavily for retirement while making minimum loan payments. A 40-year-old with $20,000 in 18% credit card debt and no emergency fund should probably pause investing and attack that debt. Different situations require different strategies, and that's okay. Third, stop listening to gurus who use shame and moral judgment to sell financial advice. If someone tells you you're stupid for having debt or using a credit card or not following their exact plan, stop listening to them. Your financial decisions are not moral decisions. You're not a bad person for having student loans. You're not virtuous for being debt-free. You're just someone trying to navigate a complicated financial system with imperfect information. What you need is accurate information and a framework for making decisions, not shame. Find advisors, books, resources that give you the math, show you the trade-offs, and let you make informed decisions. Personal finance is a spectrum of choices, not a binary between right and wrong. Fourth, invest in financial literacy. Learn how compound interest works, both for and against you. Learn how to calculate the real cost of debt. Learn how tax-advantaged accounts work. Learn how to compare interest rates to investment returns. Learn how to build a budget that balances debt payoff, investing, and living your life. The more you understand the actual mechanics of money, the less you'll need to rely on simplified rules that don't fit your situation. Dave Ramsey's appeal is that he makes it simple. But your financial life is not simple, and pretending it is will cost you. Embrace the complexity. Learn the math. Make better decisions. Fifth, use credit strategically. If you have spending problems, by all means, don't use credit cards. But if you can control your spending, use credit cards for everything you're already buying. Pay them off in full every month and collect the rewards. Build your credit score. Take advantage of sign-up bonuses. Use the fraud protection. It's free money and free protection if you use it right. And if you're worried about overspending, set up automatic payments for the full balance every month. Use the card like a debit card, but get the benefits. There's no reason to leave that value on the table just because a radio host told you credit cards are evil. Here's the bottom line. Dave Ramsey is wrong about debt because he treats it as a moral issue instead of a mathematical one. He gives the same advice to everyone regardless of their interest rates, their income, their opportunity costs, or their specific situation. And while that simplicity helps some people, it hurts others. If you're someone with high interest debt and spending problems, Dave Ramsey's advice might be exactly what you need. But if you're someone with low interest debt, stable income, and the discipline to invest consistently, following Dave Ramsey's advice will cost you tens of thousands of dollars over your lifetime. The math is clear. The trade-offs are real. And you deserve to know both sides so you can make the decision that's actually right for you, not the decision that sounds good in a soundbite. Your financial life is not a radio show. It's not a motivational speech. It's a series of mathematical trade-offs that compound over decades. Every dollar you spend on unnecessary interest is a dollar you don't invest. Every year you pause investing is a year of compound growth you never get back. Every opportunity cost you ignore is real money leaving your future. Dave Ramsey helped popularize personal finance and gave millions of people a starting point. That's valuable, but starting points are not ending points. You're allowed to graduate from simple rules to nuanced strategy. You're allowed to do the math yourself and make different choices. You're not betraying some financial philosophy by optimizing for your actual situation. You're just being smart with your money. And being smart with your money means understanding that debt is not inherently good or bad. It's a tool. High-interest debt is expensive and should be eliminated quickly. Low-interest debt is cheap and can be managed strategically while you build wealth in other ways. That's not moral relativism. That's just math. And math doesn't care about your feelings or your guru's brand. It just compounds one way or the other. So run your numbers, make your own decisions, and build the financial life that actually works for you, not the one that fits someone else's ideology. You've got this.